I'm your host, Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident. So this is the 100th episode. I don't even know that I imagined I'd get here, but here we are, and I feel very excited about that. And as I look forward into the podcast and content, it is going to be about sharing what are the truths, what are the principles, and what are the systems that can help you individually as you begin to collect your life of ands. It's my hope that the things I've learned, the people I've met, my friends, the kitchen tips that I know that can help you more gracefully step into a life that you love. I think I knew I didn't know totally what I was doing, but that the only way I was going to figure it out was by beginning. I think one of the greatest surprises in the process is that creating content like this is a process of discovery, where I imagined it was more a process of like publishing, where it was like, these are the things I know to be true, and I'm going to get on the microphone, and that is my way of publishing the thing that I already know. And I think what's been really kind of a sweet surprise in it, it's been a rich process of discovery. I discovered a lot about myself. It's been maybe one of the most liberating things in my adult life to have the language of I am for others, this really crisp articulation of who I am, and not simply just the roles that I play in life, but to really have a clear, crisp understanding of the most inside core of who I am. It's given me much direction in my life, and I don't know that from the outside much has actually changed. In some places, it's just given me a certainty and a confidence in places I intuitively chose so that I can articulate more clearly to myself that, yeah, it really does fit. And I think it's given me a more confident ownership in places in my decisions as well. You know, when your podcast is titled Scared Confident, you find yourself weaving in this thread of wanting to understand what fear says to other people. And I think for me, it's given me this really vulnerable starting point to talk to people about fear, where as I walked the planet, the 40 years before that, you would hope that conversations evolve to a place where you could get really real with people. But when your starting point is scared confident, I think understanding how ubiquitous fear is in grownups, because like as a kid, you imagine grownups are like complete human beings that are totally evolved and know who they are, and they don't experience like boogeymen. But we very much do. And so there was something about that was just like annoying to me, that I was an adult and all of that stuff hadn't been worked out. And so I think the thing that's been a surprise is to be able to ask people, like, what is your greatest fear? Feel them show up pretty introspectively in that conversation, and to normalize the sense that we all have it. And if we have the courage to name it and know it, and to understand then on the other side what fear is trying to quiet in us, like what happens when we all step through that. Having clarity in my own fear statement of I am for others, the way that that's impacted my life is, I think one really clear one is buying Share Your Genius, the company that produces this podcast. I don't believe I would have had the courage to say those words out loud. I think they would have totally come to my mind. I think I would have felt that was an idea. But I think the courage to step into those words was completely fueled by the clarity of, this is a way that I can live out being for others. And honestly, the confidence at element 3 to step out of roles, to create space for my leaders to lead, and to understand part of the way that I'm for others is to create opportunity and give them a chance to grow and do hard things. And I think when you make something, it can feel really good to hang on to it, in particular when it's doing well. And so having the courage to leave some room. I've also had some opportunities over the last year to step really clearly into some leadership roles on some boards that I serve on. And it was a thing for my brain to lead my peers, where they didn't, on those boards, they're all CEOs. They didn't join that board saying, I want to work for Tiffany. And as I began to be asked by my peers to take on some leadership roles, I think the courage that I have to step into those came faster, knowing it's part of the way that I serve that board. It's part of the way I serve the other board members is by using the gifts that I have of being able to communicate, to be able to create clear vision, to be able to excite and inspire. And that is part of the way that I'm built. And so knowing that when those talents are called for, that I need to not be self-conscious in using those, but to step in and say yeah, that's something I know how to do. I've been practicing that for a long time so that when those skills are needed, I can be at the ready. And so again, it's not about glorifying my talents. It's about saying this is part of what it takes for a group of people with a lot of different talents to come together and do something spectacular, and being willing to use my talents even when it's not convenient, because it rarely is, has been another way that I think knowing who I am has helped me step more clearly into roles that I've been asked to play. In hindsight, what I was trying to do with the podcast, maybe some people are wise enough to see this stuff in the horizon. I feel like I can only see it in the rearview mirror. In my journey as a professional, I was Element 3 CEO. That was my core identity professionally. And it became a core part of my identity as a person. And some of that served the journey, I would say, because I worked harder than I knew I could. But some of that did not serve me well because my identity was so wrapped up in the role that I was playing. And so I felt like I had worked through the process of disconnecting my identity from being Element 3 CEO, but I didn't know what to replace that with. As I looked into the next version of my life that included a kid I hadn't planned on, at a time in my life I hadn't planned on, my husband in a new job, this post-pandemic world, this idea of everything sort of as I knew it changed in a period of 6 to 12 months. And so I think part of this intuitive journey of saying I need to do a podcast seems so odd to need to just get a journal, Tiffany. I don't know, but I did this instead. I think I needed to work out, what do I do next? How do I make good decisions next? And fear was loud, and I knew that was unproductive, but I didn't know what to replace it with. And so, this idea of the fear journey was not even really birthed before we started this. It seems so silly that I would have made any of these decisions to move forward without knowing what the next page was going to say. But I just trusted that somehow I would know where to go next if I just kept stepping into what felt hard. I think next is beginning to pick up the pieces of my story and to put them into story. Not that I'm a finished product by any stretch, but I do know that there are some things that I have discovered that have been intensely liberating to me. And so to the extent that I can pick through my past and understand the things that have served me to have a really productive today, how do you get there in a way where you arrive and you have a peaceful love for your life? And I think that that's what we are all wanting, is to know, is it going to be worth it? And how do each of us make decisions in a way that we get to there, wherever that is, and say peacefully, it was totally worth it? How do I help others passionately live a sustainable life of and? Because that is my greatest joy, is to have a life with so many different ands, so many different compartments that bring me such joy. And to not step into things because your mind is telling you can't, but to begin asking yourself, how would I if I decided I was going to? A life of and, as it relates to this podcast, is practically going to look like this. This summer, we're going to drop a series called The First 17 Years, which is going to be a look at the characters that built my character. We're also going to be launching a network called the And Network. Scared Confident will be a show on it. So think of it as like a chapter book where Scared Confident will be a chapter, a voice in this idea of a passionate pursuit of a life of And we're also going to be bringing other voices, other shows underneath that umbrella to help you in other ways that, not just my voice can. I'm also going to be doing a mini series with my girls. This idea of how technology fits into our family is something I'm thinking a lot about. And so we're going to look at a mini series. So one of my ands is that I'm a mom, and I want to be really intentional about that. And so I'm going to explore and share some of the things that we're really picking through as we step into the teenage years in our home. So that's just a bit of an overview of what we're going to be looking at. It won't be the only thing. We're excited for where Scared Confident is going. As always, text me if you have a question. I love to hear from you, and you will most likely hear your question answered on the show. So thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. And I hope that you feel more confidence as you explore a passionate life of And.